It's time for Around the Ozarks Sports Scene, sponsored by Fast Break Sports and The Pitch. Here's your host, Scott Purrier.
Welcome in to another edition of Around the Ozarks Sports Scene. I am Scott Purrier. As always, big thank you to our sponsors, Fast Break Sports and The Pitch Pizza and Pub. We'll talk more about them at the end of the podcast. But as always, I love to bring on newsmakers and the people that are hot topics in the sports world. And time to catch up with one of our favorites. She was the former Drury Lady Panthers head coach, left to go turn around a program at Division I Lindenwood up in St. Charles outside St. Louis. And boy, did she. Inherited a team that won 2 games when she got there, 2-24. They won 7 her first year and then won an eye-popping 23 this year. 23-11. We welcome in Amy Eagan to the ATO Sports Scene. Amy, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Scott. Excited to be here and talk with you as always.
You betcha. Now, be honest with me. 23 was not probably in the mind of what you could do in year 2 at Lindenwood. What did you think was possible coming off the 7-19, wasn't it? Or I think year. Yeah. And then 2-24 before that, which wasn't your team. What did you think was possible this year?
Yeah. I think the first thing is I wouldn't have taken the Lindenwood job if I didn't think we had the ability to flip that thing around, to have the support of the administration, of the AD, the resources we needed in order to flip that around. I mean, I was in such a great situation at Drury. We had it rolling, there. We're winning a lot of games. So in order for me to leave there and to take over a new program, it was somewhere I knew had to be committed to women's basketball, right? And helping us flip that around. After that, I knew we had the resources and we had the support that we needed. Honestly, Scott, our first year, we had 11 freshmen. We had the most freshmen in the country on our team. And I thought we were going to do pretty well in the OVC. And then after our first game, which we played Southern Indiana, who ended up, running through the OVC last year, we lost Gracie Kelsey, our starting 5 player, to an ACL. And we just had no depth after that. And so that was the big thing. I mean, we ended up losing, I think, 8 games by 9 or less points. But I still believe if we would have had her, we would have been right there, because I think when you talk about some of the areas that we really struggled with rebounding, with depth in the 5 position defending last year, she would have filled a lot of those things. And if you saw her play against Southern Indiana and you kind of seen what she's maybe done this year for us, you would definitely have thought that, with it. So I knew getting her back was going to be a great piece. And then obviously retaining everyone in the world that we live in was going to be huge. We also picked up a couple portal kids who I knew were really, really good. Brooke Coffey being one of those from Illinois State, right? Gracie Warnley being from Abilene Christian, who I had seen both of them play a ton. And so I knew they were going to help us immediately too. So I knew we were going to be better. Now, did I maybe think we were going to go on an 11-game win streak? I don't know about that, but I knew we were going to be better and I knew we were going to compete. Gracie and Kelsey was back in the post, so I knew we had the ability to do that. So as everybody else kind of looks at it and was like, holy cow, how did that happen? I kind of believed it was going to happen and knew we could do it.
And I correct myself. I said 7-19. It was 7-21. So, I see why you didn't correct me. There you go.
I couldn't remember how many.
This is the point where you correct me now, like Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey corrected that reporter about. You've seen it by now, haven't you? Where the guy said you haven't made the Elite 8, the Final Four now 2 years, and she says, "Is that bad?" And then she goes, "So you can go ahead and do that with me if you want." But So. I don't know if your SID has looked into this, but I'm just curious what the nation's largest turnaround was from 7-23, a 16-win difference. Do you know what that is?
We have asked, and I don't think there's any way that they're able to track that and look at that unless they just do some deep diving themselves. And I think right now with spring sports and how much we've overlapped, it's really hard for them to do those things. But I would think it'd have to be pretty close to being one of the biggest turnarounds. I'm not for sure, and I don't think they track that by any stat, but I would say it'd be close.
Well, and I don't have a vote, but to me, that's National Coach of the Year material there. I mean, to take what you did and do that. But Is that a sign too, I guess, for all coaches that now you were different because you had so many young kids and they pretty much grew up within a year, but with the portal now, and the activity, what there's probably 2,000 kids in there now, I would guess, or something.
Sure.
Coaches can do a quick turnaround. I look at John Calipari at Arkansas that had no players and then gets into the Sweet 16. And a lot of them were his old Kentucky guys. But is that kind of the new age of basketball, is that if we have a down year, we may be 2 or 3 kids away that we can get from getting this thing going in the right direction and in a big direction?
Yeah, it definitely is the world we live in right now, and sometimes, whether it's unfortunate for some schools and fortunate for others, it's just about money. That's what it's about. It's about how much you can pay kids these days. It's very
Even on the girls' side?
Even on the girls' side, it is.
Wow.
It's becoming bigger and bigger. Last year at this time, I was like, oh, it hasn't really hit like our level, mid-major OVC type stuff. But I'm telling you, this year, in 1 year, it has changed a lot. It's really hit us. And I think it's hard whether you win or lose to retain kids these days. You're seeing some of the best teams in the nation and some of their top kids are still going in the portal and they're winning, so I think it's just the world we live in, and you have to understand that as a coach, and you have to be willing to work through that as a coach. And I know that's something for us that we're doing. We retained all of our kids that were sophomores this year, except for one. One of them went in the portal. So we still got a great group of kids coming back that are going to do some really great things next year. But we still have to add some pieces to it. So we're working really hard on that right now. But the portal has changed a lot of athletics. Even when you talk about scheduling, and I don't know if a lot of people think about this, but for us, even last year, we look at scheduling. We're like, okay, we need to schedule like lighter because we need to get some wins and build some confidence and build some belief. Well, like for instance, we scheduled Alabama A&M, and we scheduled them, and then their coach left. And all their kids went in the portal, and they got a new coach, and she brought in new kids, and they're a completely different team. And they beat us this year, where the year before we felt like, okay, we'll be able to match up with them next year, and that could be a possible winnable game, So it's even hard with scheduling because the rosters and the wins and losses and all that, they're just going to change every year with stuff. So it's made it pretty challenging in those areas too.
It may have been, I don't know if it was Calipari or Steve Alford or somebody had a very it made you think type of comment that the first thing out of the kids' mouths now, especially on the guy's side, is what are you going to pay me? What can you pay? And does that sour you on a kid on the women's side if that's the first thing you hear? And are all these things scaled? The higher up they go, is it a higher they know they can get more? I wouldn't even know, like with Lindenwood, and this is what you just finished year 3 in Division I.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where that would even start if I were a girl, or how you would know where that starts.
Yeah.
How's that go?
Yeah, I think every coach does it a little bit different. I think one of the first things you're asking kids these days is, do you have an agent?
Yeah.
It's crazy, but a lot of them have
handlers,
agents.
They used to be called, right?
Do you have somebody that's, doing all this negotiating for you and so forth? So you got to find that out. You got to find out who's helping them and in the mix with them. I think everybody's different. I think some of the top teams are like, hey, this is what we got. Here's the money that you have, so forth. If you're interested, let us know. The way I kind of approach it is, we have some money, but we don't like to talk about that unless you're truly interested in who we are and being a part of our team first. So we kind of approach it a little bit different. And we probably lose some kids because of that. But, for us, it's still about finding the right kids and getting the right people in our program. And, I know we're going to be successful again next year. So the last thing we want to do is mess this up with bringing the wrong kid in, with it. So we had the ability to be, if you want to say, a little bit pickier in regards to talking about money a little bit later in the process. So just to see if we can get the right kid first, with it.
Do you know how?
But I'll tell you, post players right now on the women's side, they're going to go for, if they're any good, they're going to go for 70,000, 80,000.
At your level?
I'll say anywhere between 50 and 80.
At the Ohio Valley Conference level?
Well, not Ohio Valley, but I would say more like
Power 4.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
sometimes higher than that.
the lesson, and I try to tell my son this at University of Arkansas, is find a tall potential wife. You know, I mean, if you can find one 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, you're so smart because
Yeah,
that is
I mean,
perfect.
it's your future. You're investing in your future
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
anyway, is that the whole thing now? Is it almost dizzying to keep track of? I mean, do you have your assistants watching that 24/7,
Mhm.
or who goes in? How do you guys approach it daily, and how do you decide who you want to reach out to and try to contact?
Yeah. So we have an app that we can filter a little bit. Like we definitely need some kind of kid that can play a 5 position for us. And then, we're looking for a point guard and an off guard. So we really need 3 kids. So we have a system that if you want to search for a certain type of kid, you can do that. Okay. So then all those kids are in the portal that fit that, they pop up for us. And then we just start filtering. Like we have a spreadsheet and we have the names in there. We watch film on them, if they're don't fit our system and who we want to be, we just don't even waste our time. If they do, then we try to deep dive in, we do a lot of DMs on Twitter and Instagram and trying to get their number and try to figure out people that have connections with them, whether it's AAU or high school. So it's definitely a process with stuff. I think right now what's so important for us and at our level is like July, like recruiting in July, because we can sit there and watch so many kids and make notes on them, even if we're not recruiting them at that point, because if they go in the portal, then we have something to refer back to. So we spend a lot of July just taking some really good notes on kids. So if they go in the portal, maybe we've already seen them, we've already been out, in or out. But it is definitely a process different than it used to be. I mean, I probably spent Monday and because we got back, Thursday night, and that I was probably spent Monday and Tuesday on the phone all day.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And that's the sad part of this now is, and I neglected to mention, you guys weren't done. I mean, you lost in the Ohio Valley Conference tournament title game, and in overtime. I watched that. It was, maybe a turnover here or two and a free throw made here or there, and you guys are there. But then you got the bid for postseason, which obviously as a program, you're going to take that because it's more basketball and it's a chance for you to showcase your program. And meanwhile, while you're playing 3 games in the postseason?
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
the portal's open.
3.
And it's almost like Black Friday shopping. The people that got let in at 5 a.m. and instead of showing up at 6:30, you're already behind the 8 ball because you're playing and celebrating the season you had. It just doesn't seem right with the opening of the portal that way.
Yeah, I think it's really hard, and it's hard to manage a lot of that. Like we hosted the first round of the WNIT, and we hosted on like a Thursday, and won. Well, so as we're trying to prepare for the next game, right, which is going to be Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember, but it was Sunday, but we had to travel on Saturdays. We're trying to get all transportation done, all game prep done, take care of our kids. We had a visit on Friday. We have a kid out of the portal already. Wow. So then you're talking about managing that while you're playing still. And probably the hardest thing is that, when you're going through all that, you don't know with your current team who's staying and who's leaving. And so you're still trying to you're planning, but you can't completely plan for what's going to happen. So we finished this last Thursday. We had meetings with some of the kids on Friday that I knew kind of were possibly looking to go into the portal. So we had some meetings, and then we've been going ever since then.
For somebody who's been in this for about 15, 16 years on your coaching career side, and have been at levels where high school recruiting was so important, what you were trying to do, NAIA, then Division II. Does it hurt you a little bit what this is doing to high school recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think, they added that year now. If kids go JUCO, they can get an extra year in the NCAA. I think that kind of helps it because I think some kids are having to look at or wanting to look at JUCO that maybe didn't before, because now they can get an extra year of the NCAA where they're, the options are just so different. There's a lot of coaches that just don't want to do high school anymore. They just want to do the portal, and they just want to bring in whatever they need to bring in every year for experience. I kind of like to do a little bit of both. and sprinkle in if we can with both. So like we have 2 freshmen that are signed for us that are coming in this year. And then we're going to bring in 3-4 portal kids, and because I think when you talk about building kind of the basis of your culture and the basis of your program, it's nice not to have to teach that every single year, right? To have kids that buy into that have kids that believe in that can kind of teach that while they're with the new kids. And so that's one reason I think it's big for me is because we are really big on culture and who we are and standards and that kind of stuff. So that really just helps think with teaching that.
I think we find out next week on the revenue sharing, and if that, do you understand that? And can you explain how that would affect Lindenwood and everybody else in the Ohio Valley? And, one thing that I thought was very interesting is that you're going to see at the highest level, the Power Fours, or well, not necessarily Power Fours, but schools at that level, basketball powers that don't have football are going to get a leg up because they don't have to spend that $20 million or whatever on any football players, and they can go get the best. Can you explain how it's going to work at your level?
Yeah, I think everybody's still kind of trying to figure a little bit of that out, and I think it's obviously different for every school. You're hearing things from even some of the P4s that have football that are saying, hey, a majority of our revenue sharing is going to go to football. Well, then those coaches are now looking for other jobs. I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but Buzz Williams, he left to go to Maryland because they were contributing a lot to men's basketball with revenue sharing, and so every school is different with that, but every school is kind of starting to lay out where they want that money to go. And I think some of that they have to, so the coaches know what they can recruit, how much money they have for the revenue sharing and so forth. So, we were in the transition from D2 to D1, and we applied. The NCAA said, hey, you know what? Let's stop penalizing kids for being at Lindenwood and other schools are in this transition. And let's make this a 3-year process instead of a 4-year process. And I do believe, I understand why the NCAA does have that process, because when you talk about the amount of money that you need from D2 to D1 with scholarships, with, and you're not just talking women's basketball, you're talking every sport, right? And so forth with it. There's just a big gap there, and budgets and that, there's just a big gap that you have to fill. So it's hard to go from day one of, hey, we're going D1 to being D1, right? Yeah. But I'm really excited that, they shortened it to 3 years. So next year we'll be eligible for that. We're still working through a lot of that because you have to opt in or opt out as a school. And there's so many things when you talk about opting in and opting out, like a couple of things. So if you opt in, you have all of your teams have a roster limit. Okay. So when you talk about a school like Lindenwood, that's not overly big, and you talk about a school at like Lindenwood that has been based a lot on enrollment with athletes, that's a big thing, because you're all of a sudden limiting some of that enrollment. It's not just us, it's a lot of schools. I think we're going to opt in because we've found ways to make up for some of that and to not get around it, but to make up for some of that enrollment stuff. So I think we're going to opt in, but if you don't opt in, you don't get that revenue share. So some schools, some conferences are kind of talking about, we're all going to opt in or we're all not going to opt in. Some schools are, it just kind of depends from conference and then school to school. I think the OVC, I think there's going to be some schools that opt in and some schools that opt out. And I think, they've lengthened or they've moved back that date that you have to decide that for sure. But I know a lot of schools are working really, really hard on it. So if we opt in, then we'll be able to get some of that revenue sharing. I think it's based a lot off what they give the conference, and then the conference gives the schools with that. And obviously based off a lot of, football winning, basketball winning, women's basketball winning, that kind of stuff too.
So how will there still be NIL on top of that? And how will that be regulated?
Yeah. So they are going to set, I think, so right now, by kind of what I hear, and I don't know everything about it. Yeah. But a lot of schools, men's basketball and women's basketball, are front loading their NIL stuff in regards to they're giving a lot of kids a lot of money this year to front load that process. And so when you talk about like when you talk about right now, everybody has a collective, right?
Yeah.
Because they cannot by any means, they cannot do, are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. They have a collective because they can't go through the school to pay kids. Okay. Yeah. If you opt in, you can go through your school and pay kids with the revenue sharing. You can pay kids however you want, with scholarships. Like if, one of the things we've possibly talked about is, could we use a scholarship if we didn't want to use all of them and pay kids, like we're just really brainstorming. And that's really what it is. You got to really come up with some creative ways to manage this and to handle this. So that's what we're really doing right now with stuff. If you don't opt in, you're going to have to stay with your collective. And some people that opt in will still stay with a collective, some of the higher up schools. Okay. And which is kind of like a third party, that manages all the money, that really has somebody that writes the contracts for the kids and so forth with it.
Not to get too deep in the weeds, I would hate to be a compliance director at a school now and trying to keep track of all this, but does Title IX factor in on this? And is anybody watching that or is that even a thing? If revenue sharing comes in, will there be guidelines and parameters there to make sure Title IX is followed?
Yeah. So, man, there is. I know there is. It's just the hard thing I would say about being a compliance director right now is you feel like everything changes, even as a coach, day to day.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about changing in women's basketball. Now you have you have every other sport that's also changing. So keeping all that straight is, I can only imagine, just a complete nightmare right now with stuff. I'm hoping at some point, when they set some limits on some of this NIL stuff with kids and that, I'm hoping that some stuff, at least for women's basketball, men's basketball, slows down a little bit with the ever-changing world, and we can kind of settle in just a little bit. I know it's going to continue to change some, but settle in just a little bit to some rules and to some limits, so we have some idea.
You can see why a lot of the older coaches now are saying, "Heck with this, I'm done," because they don't want to mess with all this. You're at a point in your career where you can't do that. You're still young, and I admire the way you've adapted, and it is what it is. You better get with the times and stuff. But, it's very clearly a different time than anything we were ever exposed to back in 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Even.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go back down the path of who is Amy Eagan and, how you got to this point. And you grew up in Shelbina, Missouri, up in Northeast Missouri. I got to ask you, population 1,563 now, probably not that big when you were there, but what's the obsession with the Shelby up there? You got Shelbina, you got Shelbyville.
Norm Stewart was there, man.
Yeah, South Shelby High School. Yeah. Was there somebody named Shelby and they were really famous and everybody said, we're naming everything up here after Shelby?
You know what? I really have no clue. You bring that up, and that's actually a really good point, but the only thing I can tell you is it's Shelby County.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can tell you. So North Shelby's in Shelby County, South Shelby's in Shelby County, North Shelby's, a little bit north of South Shelby. So that's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, I grew up in small town. As I tell people, I'm a small town kid.
Instead of stopping for a point guard, maybe you ought to do some internet research on Shelby and who Shelby was. But and then you played at Truman State, an All-American Hall of Famer there, led the career stats in assists and steals, scored more than 1,500 points, got your coaching career at St. Ambrose and Ashford. I have no idea where those are. NAIA schools?
Yeah, they're NAIA schools up in Iowa.
Okay.
Ashford was actually a for-profit school, kind of based off of, if you remember when Grand Canyon was for-profit.
Yeah.
So it was primarily an online school and for-profit, and Ashford was just like its home base where they had graduations and that. But we also had a campus, and we had some athletics and some sports and that, but primarily it was online type stuff with it. But yeah,
back at Truman State as a coach for 6 seasons, 111 and 62, won a GLVC title, a couple NCAA trips. Then you made a decision that I'm sure raised some eyebrows up there. You left your head coaching job late summer to go be Molly Miller's assistant at Drury.
Yeah.
And how tough was that decision for you And obviously you had the foresight to know that Molly was probably going.
Yeah.
And, if you guys had the year you're going to have, you had a pretty good shot of being elevated one chair over to head coach. Talk about that decision and how gut wrenching that was for you with your players, your alma mater, the school where you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. It was really hard. It was really hard. And, I was lucky I was able to have some really good conversations with Molly. And, even come down here, nothing was guaranteed. There was no guarantee that I was going to get the head job. I just believed in who I was and what I did. And I believed I would have an opportunity to do that. And maybe more of an opportunity to do that once I kind of engulfed myself in the Drury family, and made relationships and so forth with it. But it wasn't just handed over to me or given to me. But I was very thankful that I had that opportunity. So she had called me and kind of said the same, like, hey, I'm pregnant and I'm going to have this kid in February. And I'm going to need somebody to help me out. And this is probably the best team that we've ever had here. And we would have, and I will say it, we would have won the national championship that year. No doubt about it. I mean, we were running the show until COVID hit, and then the year got canceled. But we had the talent. We had everything. We had everything we needed to win it that year. So that was hard and obviously disappointing with it. She also had communicated with me that she felt eventually, and again, nothing was set in stone, that she would maybe look to advance her career. She's very driven, as you know. She's very driven, very goal-oriented, and she wanted to be a P4 coach eventually. So she knew she had to take another step. And look at her now, Arizona State with stuff. So took that chance, it was a hard decision. I had Hannah Bellinger coming in. If you remember her from the GLVC at Truman, ended her career at Iowa State and had a great career there. Her last year with stuff, had a remarkable GLVC career. I also had committed at that time Brooke Luttrell, who ended up decommitting from Truman when I left and went to Central Missouri, was an All-American, and then just finished her last year at Creighton this year. So sometimes I'm like, man, I had some great talent committed there. What could have been, But yeah, it was hard. I mean, I loved Truman State, and I loved my experience there as a player and as a coach. I just knew the same thing for me, if I wanted to continue to advance my career, Truman's very, very academic, and the resources that Drury had to win a national championship versus Truman, they were just really different. And so that was something that was important to me. I feel like I work really hard. I feel like I do things the right way, and I wanted to have an opportunity to win a national championship at that point in my career.
You got to run the program for about 48 hours because Molly literally had a kid and was back trying to be on the sideline. I remember that.
I know. I won't forget, it was at Bellarmine. She came back. She flew different than us getting there. And, she sat at the end of the bench and really was like, here, you go do it, but I'm going to be here. And I remember a couple of times because that was a tough game. That was of all games, right? Yeah. That was a tough game. And we communicated a couple times about a few things, particularly the press. I hadn't even been there a year, so I didn't have all the ins and outs of kind of some of the adjustments with that and stuff. But so it was good, though. It was really good. We ended up with the W, so I didn't get fired. It's all good to go, man.
I've been in sports for media for 40 years, and you've been in it for a long time as a player and a coach. I don't know if there's a bigger travesty in the history of sports than that 32-0 Drury team with those players, having somebody or having to walk in and say your season's over during COVID.
Yeah.
And not give those girls another year that were on that team. Tell me about that day. Was it Corey Bray that walked in, or how did you guys find out? And how devastating was that reaction to some great Drury kids and players?
Yeah. I mean, moments like that, you just don't forget. And it still just is like, oh my God, that was so hard, So we were actually in practice the day before our game. We were in practice, and you kind of heard throughout the day a few things about like some junior colleges. They were canceling. They were on the bus to go to nationals and canceling it and that. But you just kind of never think it's going to happen to you, at that point. And it just moved so fast. That was the big thing. It just moved so fast from the time we got into practice. I mean, we had no idea. Like nothing. And then by the time we left, he walks in and, he pulled us all together and he told us. And I mean, the kids, how devastated they were. I mean, can you imagine being Haley and being Deja and them and just working so hard for something and doing it multiple years, and then it just kind of being ripped away from you. And then, when they didn't get another year, and then, the kids after them did, I think that was hard too, to kind of stomach some of that, even as a coach, because you wanted those kids to see all their hard work pay off with stuff.
It just angers me when I see University of Miami's got a kid that's in his 9th year playing tight end, or things like that. And Haley and Deja and that group, 32-0, and I, you said no doubt they'd have won the national title then. That's one of the greatest teams of all time in D2 women's basketball, isn't it?
Yes, I 100% believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at some of those scores. Oh, wow. They were just doing it, and I felt like, even as a coach, like everybody had thrown everything possible at us that we were ready to handle whatever we need to do, whatever we need to see in the NCAA tournament. So, and we were hosting. That was hard. It was a really hard year.
So Molly goes to Grand Canyon. You step into the head coaching job. All you do is go 87-9 in 3 years, win 3 GOAC championships, keep that rolling. National runner-up, national D2 coach of the year that first year. A tough decision again when the Lindenwood job came up and you did your research. What are the memories you're going to take away from that run, the 3 years as head coach and 1 as assistant at Drury?
Yeah. I'm going to remember most the kids that we had in our program and my staff. We had Addie Roller here at the time, and Jordan Malott, who's with me now still. Yeah. When you go through, so, when I was talking to Corey Bray, actually, when they were looking at me and I was trying to get the head job, one of the things he asked me was, how are you going to follow Molly Miller, like the GOAT, and of course I knew that, I played there, was great, was a Springfield area kid, like had just done amazing things. And, I said, I'm just going to be myself. Like, I'm very confident in who I am. I've been a head coach before. I'm going to be myself. And that's really what I did. I just stepped right in there and I was just myself. We changed some things. We changed a few things. We were able to continue with the press because we had some returners coming back, and then we added some pieces. And we just kind of changed what we need to do every year, and small, minimal type stuff to continue to be successful with it. But, I think when you look at I honestly feel so bad, Scott, for our national championship runner-up team, because that experience was nothing like what they deserved. Yeah. We were still in the COVID time, and I think they all got like 2 people in the stands for them. It was in a convention hall. So they didn't really get a true experience of what it's like to play in a national championship. And to me, that's a little bit sad. I understand, like, that's how it had to be at that time, but that's sad. But I will remember that, how we were in the hotel. We had a COVID test every morning, our whole team. And Isaiah Lynch every day tested positive, and every day had to go back and do a deep nose test. And so she would sit down there every day for like 2 hours in the morning, because she had to go through all that. And I was like, how can you guys just keep her body somehow didn't take to how they were testing or something. Yeah. So she wasn't positive, but it was just a process, and one that I wish that group, because they were so great, could have had a normal run there with it. But yeah, the kids that, you talk about the kids that I got to coach, just phenomenal kids, great players, Paige Robinson and Peyton Richard, that whole group. And then some of the younger kids that we brought in, and, Kaylee Demintz, and like they were just a great group of kids to coach, just so driven to win championships. And you don't find that every single day in kids these days. But I'll always remember, those kind of things and their work ethics and so forth with it. But I would also say, and this, I think one of the special things about Drury that has made Drury so successful is just the people surrounding the program, the boosters, the people that show up every single day. I mean, we had a parade when we came back, people out there waving the flags, and some of them still stay in contact with me. And I think they're just great people, that love women's basketball. And that's always been something that's been very special about Drury.
And when you say Molly Miller, you mean the Libby Dunn of middle-aged women's college basketball, Molly Miller, right? And how much fun was it to watch all the stuff on Twitter or X, and the New York Post calling her the hottie in basketball and all this stuff. You and I that have known her for a long time, we're just laughing. I'm sending her some of those screenshots, and one of her answers was, thank God Derek's not on social media. It's but
she was going viral.
Exactly,
that. I mean, it was complete all over everything.
I hate to tell you this, but Molly's done a lot more than Libby Dunn has, to this point and stuff. But how much fun was it to watch Molly grow, and how inspirational is it for you, what you've already done at Lindenwood in a year, and then seeing her, being courted by these power fours, and Arkansas is right there in the mix. I hoped she'd wound up at Arkansas. It didn't work out. I would guess it's probably an NIL commitment type deal, maybe part of it there.
Yeah.
But to watch that and to see in your profession what can happen, you took a chance and you were an assistant on her bench when you'd been a head coach, and then you have your great run with Drury, and then you turn Lindenwood around, and next thing, she's cashing bigger checks at Arizona State now.
Yeah, I think it's so great for her. I think me and Molly would tell you this too. We're different in a lot of ways, but we're really similar in the fact that, man, are we competitive, and man, do we like to win, So I think it's so cool to see her. And obviously, I mean, her two kids are so freaking cute. And I love watching them, within the process and them growing up through social media even, it's because I was there for when they were young, and I was there for kind of the beginning of that. So I think that's really cool. And I'm excited for her. I think, she's going to have a great opportunity there. They didn't have to move. She already knows the area. She beat them this year. So I think she already knows, hey, my kids, if I get similar kids to what I had at Grand Canyon, we're already going to be a leg up on where they were last year. So I think she has a really good idea and feel of what she needs, so she's going to do great there. I mean, she's going to do great in the Big 12. And I'm excited to see what she does. And, I think it's kind of cool. We stay in contact, we don't get to talk all the time, but we'll stay in contact here and there, and we'll share maybe, a kid here and there with each other, or, those kind of things. But I think, both of us are really competitive, and both of us really want to win and surround ourselves with great people.
Now, I would say we're probably not going to see Amy Eagan go be Molly's assistant at Arizona State now, a repeat of the Drury situation, right?
Yeah, correct.
You guys were 14-2 at home this year. You won twice as many games at home than you won all year the year before.
Yeah.
What's happening at your Lindenwood environment and atmosphere? Are people getting excited there?
It is. It's crazy, with it. I'm really excited with how we ended the year to see where we start next year with stuff, because I think we broke through a lot of barriers. I probably shouldn't say barriers, but I think we got a lot of people that were I can't tell you the number of emails and text messages I got that were oh my gosh, you guys are fun to watch. I cannot wait till next year. I haven't been this excited about women's basketball for, this many years type stuff at Lindenwood. So I think we've sparked the interest of a lot of people on campus, a lot of people in the community. And so I think we're going to see some really great things, because I don't expect any drop off from us, and I do think our kids are fun to watch. I think they compete their butts off. I think they play so hard. So I think we're going to continue to build that there. And that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun with stuff.
You probably ought to just go eat lunch every day at Incarnate Word, and sit in their cafeteria. That'd be a good place to start up there. It would it would seem, which is like a college program with what they've done there too. But well, you've clearly set the bar high up there. You've got people excited. That's a great thing. Are people starting to figure out that Lindenwood's here at D1 and in that St. Louis area and get ready?
I'll tell you what, that playing in the WNIT helped us, playing in the WNIT and winning. We've hosted the first round and then we went to Tarleton State, the second round. And I got some guy came up to me after the game and gave me the tickets, the season tickets. He's like, "Hey, I didn't know who Lindenwood was," or not season, but the game tickets. "I didn't know who Lindenwood was before this, but I'm now a fan. And here's these tickets for your memories. I looked you guys up." I had got an email from somebody down there that's like, "Hey, I didn't know who Lindenwood was before, but I'm a fan now." And so I think we're starting to put our name on the map, right? And we're starting to outreach, and people are starting to learn who we are. And I think that not only helps women's basketball, but that helps your school overall, with stuff. And so I think us playing in the WNIT and having some success has really started to take some of that, to a different level. And I'm excited about that too.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, because you had a front row view over the last couple of years. Reagan McCowan at Western Illinois, Lebanon product. Yeah. You held her to 35 in the conference tournament semifinal.
That was a big held her.
Yeah, barely. What kind of impact has she had on that league? And as a local girl, I'm sure there's a lot of interest here in Southwest Missouri.
Yeah. A kid that you hate playing against, but you love to watch play. Yeah. She's special. I don't know if I need to say much more than that. She's special. She's a special player in our league. I think she's a kid too that, as you probably know, Scott, could definitely go on and play bigger and at a higher level. But I think she is really about the experience for herself and really takes that to heart and likes where she's at. So props to her for staying and for being a part of that. But yeah, she's a tough match for a lot of people. And I don't know how some of those shots go in, but they do go in. And I will always say we need about 2 or 3 people on her at once to guard her with stuff. So our kids know when she touches it, we better have some team defense, and it still doesn't work out.
She's an inspiration in the fact that she went in the portal a year ago and then went right back to Western Illinois. The loyalty thing. Have you had kids that have been there's been attempted poaching with your roster too?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Did they tell you, or how do you find out?
They talk, kids talk, and you kind of hear about it for sure. And in all honesty, a lot of kids will just tell you these days.
Yeah.
With it. But I think it's a hard, tough situation. You're hoping that they have a great experience that will make up for some of that. And I think Reagan's a great example of that. Now, I'm not sure if one of my kids went in the portal, I would take them back because I'm kind of stubborn like that. Yeah. But I think JD was very fortunate that he did take her back.
Well, go shopping. It's time to go shopping some more. And on players, you need a point guard, need a big, go find them. And for God's sake, find out why the Shelby infatuation is going on in your home area, okay?
All right. Next time we'll talk, I have an answer for you.
Very good. Thanks, Amy. Best of luck to you, and have a great summer.
Thank you.
You bet. Amy Eagan, the head coach at Lindenwood University. Always fun to catch up with her, and really somebody that I love talking to because she's not afraid to get into the weeds on the profession and some of the things that are happening with NIL and that type of stuff. So always appreciate Amy's time. Big thanks again to our sponsors, Fast Break Sports at 3109 South Campbell. They are your home for all things sports cards and collectibles, memorabilia. They've got it there. You can go check it out. You can get those things, protect those investments you've got in football cards, baseball cards. You've got it. They've got it at Fast Break Sports. And in the Pitch Pizza and Pub, our friend Brian Bevel there is located off East Sunshine in the Southern Hills Shopping Center. Great place to go for NCAA basketball. Baseball season's going now. They've got a sports bar feel there and TVs everywhere. Great for lunch, great for dinner. Pizzas, calzones, cold beverages, meeting spaces for your next business meeting. Go see Brian and the folks at the Pitch Pizza and Pub. We sure appreciate both of our sponsors. That's going to do it for this edition. We'll see you next week on Around the Ozarks Sports Scene.